Okay, it's about 7:31 on Saturday, September 19th, 2020. And this is the early preparation session for Kayla and Stacey to lead today's session on bullying. Ms. Kayla,
Hey, I'm cooking.
good morning.
I'm just gonna have some sorry for the blowing my nose here, but I was just gonna have some coffee, but then I thought, nah, I need to have something a little bit more than coffee.
What are you making? Omelets, pancakes, something else?
No. I'm like really into onions right now. It's really weird.
Ah, good, excellent.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not really healthy, but caramelized onions for breakfast.
Caramelized onions, absolutely. And when I make stir fry, that's always something I always put in there.
So how are
Along
you
with
doing?
mushrooms.
Oh yeah, yes. I'm like on a major onion kick, and I don't know why. My most favorite though are Brussels sprouts.
Those are also very, very good.
Yes, burnt to a crisp on the outside. Put like crushed red pepper. I mean, it makes the air really toxic and smoky. And then when it's all cooked and done and everyone's coughing, then you stop the pan and then you put Parmesan cheese on top of it. Oh my God. Oh, getting hungry just thinking of it.
You know what else I like to put in some things is green onions.
Ooh.
Okay, so this early session here is for you and Stacey. Stacey said she's booting up right now. And I'm also going to go grab some coffee myself. Ah, there she is. So, in fact, let me make you a co-host slash host. Okay, so you see that the lobby is enabled, right? So nobody else can join. Even if they join before the top of the hour, we can keep them in the lobby so you and Stacey can have this preparatory session all to yourselves. Okay? Hey, Stacey, you're booted up. You're still on mute, by the way.
Okay, don't go anywhere yet. I heard
Hey.
you say you and Stacey could have this. Where's Kayla? Are you
I'm
there?
here. I'm cooking.
Oh, okay.
And I'm on my phone, so
It's okay.
yeah.
We can watch you, throw food around. It's okay.
No, my phone's flat.
So
Like
here's what I came on early actually, Sam. I wanted to see you. But I'm not sure. Do we need a preparatory session? Let me tell you what's in my head. What's in my head is I want to let Kayla sort of take the lead. The only part that I really want to be there for is to help with the enforcing when people go off focus, to gently, and I'm not so good at being gentle. This is going to be hard for me, but I think if it's Kayla and myself together, it will be easier for one of us to jump in and refocus.
yes.
So again, I wanted this to happen. I'm happy to share my reasons why I wanted this to happen, but I'm not sure what Kayla, what exactly do you think we need to prep on?
Well, I just wanted to touch base with the actual Talanoa itself because sometimes people aren't familiar with it, and we did have a few people kind of jump in on other people's stories, but I think they corrected themselves. But it's really that age-old dialogue of just sharing stories and connecting. I mean, you get it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that, again, I don't really care what anything's ever called, but what I like about the process, or what's most important to me, is that sharing of the personal story. So maybe you just want to be really clear to them on the rules of it, and let them know that, what is it? It's 3 separate questions, correct?
Well, that's the afterwards. The first round is just the sharing of the stories, and that's it. And it's so funny too, because I realize not too many people who are familiar with it, they still don't share a story. They still go into a hypothetical third person reasoning. It's really easy to do that. It's like our minds are trained to talk about something in the air rather than something that we have experienced ourselves. So
maybe the key is making it really clear that there's going to be another section, another round, just to be really clear that just for this, because I can only guess I know how I get frustrated, and I think Sam shares this, but because his camera's off, I can't see if he's nodding in agreement or not.
Yeah.
But I know when I try to follow the rules, and then thank you.
I can imagine. I can only imagine.
Well, I actually felt pretty safe speaking for you in this case, but when I follow the rules and then the other people aren't, it's really frustrating because I have things I want to say too. So
okay, good. So yeah, I'll if you'd like, I will do that in the very beginning. These are the rules of the actual Talanoa, and you'll have time to discuss your hypotheticals, but no way, shape, means, or forms are anyone to kind of digress about another person's story. That's another huge no-no, is nobody really did that. But that was one thing I remember on our specific Talanoas. It's well, you can't talk about that. I'm sorry, that's story. That's not for you to talk about. People always checked each other on that. And it was kind of nice.
Yeah, that part. Yeah, and I'll definitely try to help
Yeah.
with that. Sam, what do you think about this idea? What do you think about, like, as this is going on, and the person is really rambling, what do you think about if I sent like a private message? Like if we set that up beforehand where somebody gets something private, like, agreed upon beforehand. Because aside from the Talanoa, I'm interested in the overall collaboration that we've been trying to do for all this time. So what do you think about bringing that idea up? So like as things are going on, instead of breaking it, interrupting somebody, they would have their chat open and they would get a private message, like try to stay on, try to keep it focused on yourself, or try to wrap up shortly. Or, I mean, we're going to try to give plenty of time anyway, but, try to be succinct. Or any thoughts?
I would suggest writing this stuff down like right now and be very clear with the protocol going into the session. And also I would recommend in the course of the discussion, if you feel that those protocols were insufficient, then pop up and say, hey, let's add another guidance, and here's what it is. Because I do think last time people did stray away from the guidelines of the Talanoa. And so I do like the fact that you are talking right now about how to keep it on course. And it's also very clear that today you two are moderators. So do whatever moderation you feel appropriate, okay? This is not my style, this is you two now, okay? So do whatever you feel is right.
I have a kind of problem with that because I think that Kayla and I are collaborating with you right now. So for me, there's no reason to separate. Like do you know what I'm trying to say?
Well, I appreciate that. I also know that I'm, as we were before, experimenting with different modes of collaboration and conversation. So too much, I think, is me, providing guidance, and I love it when other people do it so that we can actually add to the pool of collected knowledge. And I certainly have no issue helping with any of that if you like, but I do think it's good that there's other moderators that are clearly understood by the people. I think people already have kind of a built-in established way of interacting with me, and I think it's good for them to get some freshness. And so that's why I think it's not that I don't want to. I think that we learn more by changing things up a bit.
So now that I heard myself saying that to you, because that's how I think. That's why sometimes the words come out before the thoughts are clear. Kayla, I think what I want to do is after you, say, what the guidelines are, I think I'd like to offer people the option and say, I'm going to be, like set it up from the beginning. It'll make it easier for me because I won't feel like a bad guy if I set it up from the beginning and say, one of the roles that I'm taking is to try to keep focus. And so if you would like a private message as a reminder, just raise your hand. If they raise their hand, that's how they'll get it. If they don't, they won't. What do you think of that as an experiment?
Let's do it. There's nothing wrong with that for me on my end.
So if someone doesn't agree to a private message and they're rambling and they're talking about somebody else or they're theorizing, how would you like to handle it?
I'm jumping in. I'm jumping in.
Nice. Good. Like it.
Yeah.
Just have my back. Just have my back. That's all I
got your back. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Why don't you guys talk? I'm going to go get some coffee right now and let the dogs out because I know that once 8 o'clock goes in, I'd like to, not have to be interrupted to take the dogs out. Okay. So let me do that right now. All right.
Okay.
And Stacey, I did want to talk to you about the 3 questions because they don't have to be the normal 3 questions. The 3 questions are: where are we at now? Where do we want to go? And how do we get there? But it doesn't have to be that, you know, it could be something completely different.
So what
So
would you think? What would you think if after sharing the stories, is there anything you would have done differently with that story?
yeah, ooh, that way people can start talking in hypotheticals.
And they can reflect on their own behavior. You know, now they're reflecting on
Yeah.
their own behavior.
Shh, stop it. Yeah. Sorry, this is like prime time.
That's okay. That's
Prime
okay.
time
I really like that. I
doggy
love
duties.
that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you and I had spoken, I was going to share this when I started about the whole, you know, I'm going to take it from the approach of when I did the bullying.
Yes.
But again, it's all too, like for me, this exercise is really also about not just listening to others, but it's increasing self-awareness.
Right.
So I like that as
Yes.
the second question very much.
Another thought that came to my head about the second question, though, or hey, if that's the first question, ow, you jerk, stop it. Then there's, I still don't think this is a good idea, but I'll ask anyways. Would we want people to talk about another person's experience?
We might know if you want to go in that direction. The way I would do it, if you wanted to go in that direction, is if anybody wanted to talk about their own feelings as they heard a certain person tell their experience, what came up for them. But not, you know, I wouldn't give anybody. I don't like the idea of somebody commenting on somebody else's experience. But it's fair to say, you know, when so said this, it brought up feelings. I remembered when I.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to that. Just because it opens up a lot, but not to say that opening things up isn't a bad thing, you know. I wouldn't say it opens up a can of worms, but you know, it's trying to get people on track.
How about we do this? We make very clear what the first question is. We make very clear what the second question is, but not until, and make it clear that's not till round 2.
Okay, yeah.
And then question 3, why don't we intimate that we're gonna not tell them yet, you know, like why don't we let it go, or just say we're gonna see where the conversation goes, like make that a little bit more of a collaborative direction even.
Yes, perfect, because that's exactly what I was thinking.
Great.
Keep it simple. Simple is good, and simple is not always easy.
I hope Sam is taking note of how women work together.
Oh, yeah, right.
Wait, we're being recorded. I forgot.
Yes, there you go.
Zoe's listening.
All right, I'm gonna have to. I'll write some stuff in the chat too, so that way we can be reminded.
Okay, and if you want to, you know, go do what you have to do. I'll turn my camera off too, and we can just leave it going in the background. And whenever anybody shows up, just holler.
Yay! All right, my dear. I'll turn on the camera once I get onto my computer. But I got my what's it called ready? My steak and steak and onions.
Oh, in the morning! Wow.
You know, I've heard that if with me and my body type, and it makes sense because I used to do this all the time, where I would have like a big breakfast, a moderate lunch, and no dinner. I mean, it's not good to skip dinner, but because I danced in the evening from like 7 to 10, I really didn't have anything.
Got it. Yeah.
So I think my body is kind of used to that. So I'm trying to revert back to that, but it's been kind of hard because I actually exercise in the mornings now. from 5 in the morning to whenever.
Oh my God.
I know. That's why I'm awake. I'm like, you guys ready?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. I got no sleep. I tried so hard to sleep yesterday. I didn't get to sleep till close to 5.
Oh man, really?
Yeah.
Because I was
I
having
wanted,
a hard time.
oh God, I wanted so badly to get a lot of sleep.
Me too. That's why I didn't have a cocktail last night, is because I wanted to go to sleep, and I also wanted to have brain power, which is why I'm also eating a big breakfast, is to have a little bit of brain power today. Ah, dang dog.
Anyway, all right. So go finish. What time is it? I don't even know what time.
Yeah, we got a few minutes.
Oh, got 10 minutes. All right. So go finish what you have to do. I'm going to throw in a laundry real quick. Get something going here.
Sounds good. I'll put myself on mute just in case I have to yell at these creatures.
Okay, but I'm not on mute this way.
We could all hear Stacey's laundry.
That's in the other room. Actually, I'm going to mute because I like to sing to myself. Kayla, can you still hear me?
Yes, and I sing to myself very loudly too.
You know what, though? I just had a different thought.
Yes.
So I heard this, I'm just going to put some music on in the background that I heard, and has nothing to do with anything we're doing, but since it's silent space anyway, it won't hurt to play it. So when I hear this song, though, imagine it's a song to Mother Earth, okay? And now I'm going to go do my laundry while the song plays.
Nice.
Loud.
You are not hidden. There's never been
And to her children, not just to Earth.
You were forgotten. You are not hopeless. For you have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. There is no distance that cannot be covered over and over. You're not defenseless. I'll be sheltered, I'll be armored. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your breath so your hear the whisper underneath your breath. I hear you whisper you have nothing left. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. I will rescue you. My name is Skyhurst.
Kayla, Stacey, are we ready to go?
1 second. Kayla just typed something in the chat and I'm just typing something in the chat.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'm coming in and out. I don't know why.
I just got my coffee, so I'm back.
I'm still stuffing my face.
Hello, Jaswinder. I apologize. I haven't showered yet, so my hair is all scraggly today.
It wasn't the hair I object, it's the smell. Nice to see everybody, including Kayla. Missed you. Stacey, can't see you, Stacey.
I'll be there in 1 second. I just want to finish typing what I want to say.
That's a new one.
I may surprise you, Jaswinder. I may not be as predictable as you imagine.
You knew you'd say that.
That woman's got a weird sense of humor, you know.
Weirder than the eye of the beholder.
I don't know any beholders with eyes. Have you ever tried holding your eye?
You hold your eye all the time. So do I.
Yeah, we're on form today by the look of things.
By the way, somebody did hold my eyelids open this morning. I mean, not this morning, last Wednesday. I went in for an eye doctor check-in. I always enjoy those droplets they put in your eye. It's so fun.
The dilation of fluid, I did it to
Yes.
me this morning. Took me hours to overcome it, and I'm still trying to focus.
Oh, I hate that.
You're looking good, redhead.
Oh, thank you. Hair's still wet, but I did shower.
Good. Yeah, you smell very nice.
Thank you.
Oh, I wanted to tell you guys there was an earthquake last night here in California.
How?
Say again.
4.6 earthquake.
Wow.
That's a semi-decent earthquake, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was the dog on my bed.
You were dreaming again, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when I was little, I wanted to be an actress. So of course I thought about you have to live in California. At the time, that's what, you know, I'm talking about when I was, you know, elementary school. But I remember thinking the idea of earthquakes terrified me. There's no way I ever want to live on that side of the country.
Mm.
You know, earthquakes don't kill you. It's everything that falls that kills you.
Yep, the down power lines, the fires, the
Yeah.
gas that's released,
Yeah.
all of that.
Except that the earthquake caused all that.
Yeah.
That's the same as saying guns don't kill you. Then why do we have such a big armament factories?
So Stacey, I don't know if I remember telling you, for most of my life in the US, I've been on the left coast. But for 2 years, my family actually lived in Baltimore.
Oh.
So I have a small taste of the East Coast. What I really remember is that the falls, the autumns were beautiful. Really, really beautiful.
They really are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep getting this pull that I want to move further upstate New York, which I used to be a real city person. Like I wanted to be in this. Now I want to be in the country where there's a small, quaint little town real close by.
Like my situation.
Yeah. Except I do love the East Coast. I do love where I do love the trees and the mountains. I mean, it's beautiful. It
What
really
about
is.
Vermont? You know, Connecticut.
I'm letting Joel in. Okay. I don't see him. There he is. Hey, Joel, did you ever see that I had tagged you in this one conversation? It was a thread that Michael Josefowitz was having. And I don't know if you ever saw it. And the reason I tagged you is because this particular conversation had a lot to do with like geometry. And I thought it would be something that might interest you, might not. But either way, I know that even Doug had mentioned on a different call that he was somebody that you should make contact with.
I've been thinking on how to respond to it.
Oh, you did see it.
Yeah. I don't know. I can kind of see a way of doing it, but it becomes a matter of why you want to do it, and how much of what it is you want to be controlling, and what direction you want to take it. And that all would change how the variables are and how you want to set up the whole thing. So it gets really complicated.
Got it. So was I right though that it was of interest?
Yeah. Something that's going to challenge my mind to come up with a decent response to.
Sometimes what I do is I just ask a question that I think is seeded with an idea that somebody might use to take on their own. That just like a little piece that maybe they just didn't notice almost.
Okay. What would be the difference between this attempt and any other attempt made in history to do the same goal?
Not having attachment to the outcome.
Yeah, well, one of the things he stated was understanding how war and genocide comes about. When you understand how brain functionality comes about and how some of it is in lineages, when you want to achieve a complete state of peace and no genocide, the only way to get that is through war and genocide, especially if you can't accept another group's way of being.
I think I was just focused on the math part of it, on the math and shapes.
Yeah, but as I say, when trying to understand how to create that, you need to understand the purpose it's being created for.
Do
so
you?
that you
Is
can
that
come up
true?
with the right
Hold
way.
on. I'm wondering if that's true. Jaswinder, do you have any idea of like kind of what we're even referring to?
I do apologize. I wasn't particularly paying any attention. If you'd like to refresh what you said.
No, we didn't really. I didn't. No, we're gonna get ready to start on our thing anyway. But
No, just a quick refresher will do.
I didn't really say. All I said is there was a certain thread that I had tagged Joel in on, where Michael Josefowitz, he was talking about a lot of stuff. I was just focused on one small part of it. And I asked Joel if I was correct that he would be interested. He expressed that yes, he would be interested. He was more looking at the bigger picture of the whole thing and where he wanted to jump in. I was just get Colin in. I was just focused on the math. He asked me what would be different in imposing an idea that has been, hasn't been right or whatever. I don't know how he said it. And I said, because I have no attachment to dropping off like a thought. And if somebody takes it with where they go with it, I'm fine with that. If they don't take it at all, I'm fine with that too. So I was just focused on the math part of it though, because to focus on the whole thing, that's where I think people get into trouble with, because the minute we deviate from one part, that's sort of when I think we get stuck. But that's for another conversation.
Well, if you don't on the detail and the whole and try and complete the picture, then it can be extremely confusing and complicated. The whole idea is to complete the picture.
But shouldn't you start at the beginning?
So even, it doesn't really matter what idea you drop where, it has to have a destination. It will find its destination.
So I think what I'm trying to get to is that we have to know what the alphabet is first, and we have to agree on the sounds that the letters make first before we can argue what's in the essays. So that's sort of where I was going on. That I think
the counterintuitive to that is we don't need an alphabet to start a language.
That's
Language.
fine. That's a whole nother story.
Yes, but this is what I'm getting at. It doesn't matter where your starting point is. You don't even need a map. The question always arises, where am I going? It doesn't matter where I am. When I am here, and there is very little I can do about that, if anything at all. Then the other questions arise, and then obviously you lead on to where can I end up with this?
I think I'm looking at it through the filter of collaboration though. So keeping the idea of being able to collaborate as that's always like the focus. Sometimes I think just being able to get in a, get that foundation there. And sometimes the foundation has already been created by a lot of people and it might just be missing one little tweak that nobody thought was important.
The contention here is there are so many foundations, and most of those foundations are incomplete. And though people will argue that it's as complete as it's ever going to be, and you should accept it as is, and the question arises, why? Why should I accept it as is?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to complete the circuit. That's the whole contention, that it has to complete the circuit. I don't know if you understand by what I mean by completing the circuit. The overall picture must be complete.
I think I do understand.
Thank you. In that case, I'm complete. And that's my check-in, by the way, all from the heat wave. Yeah.
So just a note, it's about 12 minutes after the hour. We have 6 of us.
So do we want to start with a little bit of a check-in? I know Jaswinder just did his, and I can start with mine. Hello. We just had an earthquake here, 4.6 in the San Gabriel Valley at about 11:30 in the evening. But it's a beautiful morning, hence the fact that I'm wearing a sweater, and I'm complete.
Maybe
Joel,
I'll go. Okay, go ahead, Stacey.
No, I was offering Joel to go.
I'm having a day of being resistant to my coursework. So I've exercised and tried to think of other things because today doesn't seem like my mind wants to be focused on it. So I'm allowing it to churn on whatever it needs to churn on. Other than the slight resistance to my coursework, I still feel quite happy in myself. Interested to see where the conversation is going to go today.
I'll check in because I'm kind of disappointed that more people aren't here, but I'm not surprised because I think that people were aware that we were going to be talking about bullying. And I have a feeling that there are some people that maybe said, you know, this isn't that important to me. I don't want to come here. So that is my check-in.
Sam, Colin?
I'll go. I think for a week now, I've been relatively free of the pain that I talked about in my lower back 2 weeks ago. So I'm very happy about that. I've been doing a little bit more Tai Chi. I don't think that's the cause of it, but it's actually made me more aware that just doing that more regularly is a good thing anyway. So that's been good. Last Sunday, my son completed a road trip from Santa Clara up to Camino Island. He chose possibly the worst air quality weekend in the entire year to make that drive, especially through Oregon. But now that he's here, other than some initial surprise at various different things, I'm about as happy as I could be. You know, last night Ronnie and Nick were playing ping pong. That's like the third time, maybe more, that they've played ping pong this week since they've been together. I played ping pong with both of them, and Nick and Amy, when they Nick and Ronnie, when they do that, both times they've gone on for 2 hours straight. So I really, really like that. And Ronnie, all on her own, made dinner last night. So I think things are good with this. So I'm just trying to see how long that can last. Also, at work, this new initiative I've been working on, CEO is really pushing me to make it real. So I'm building a pipeline of potential customers, prospects who could actually engage with us on this. And I've talked to two of them already. I got a very positive response from one. The other raised a very, very valid objection, which I'm now working on and including into the proposal. So that's going very well. So the pipeline is now about 5 or 6 companies deep. And the objective was to have 6 companies signed up as prospects that I could actually pitch to by the end of October. So I think I'm on track for that. So all in all, oh, and the air quality is much better today than it has been the last 2 days. Even yesterday, it was much better than the previous day. So all of that has been making me feel pretty good. And we get Stacey and Kayla here leading us today, so I can actually just participate. I don't have to be a moderator. So I don't know, maybe life is good today. That's my check-in.
Colin, do you want to check in?
Yeah, I'm almost ready. We're working on the final layers here. I too have had a wonderful family experience. I went to go to the park with my grandson, and we went the day before. Anyway, they had to leave early, so I wasn't sure. I checked the park, checked back, checked the park, and I thought, well, maybe they fell asleep, so I waited on the doorstep. And about 20 minutes later, because I figured she had her phone with her, so she would have caught my messages. But anyway, I see them coming back, and so I walked to meet them, and I did the hush sign to my daughter so that she wouldn't speak to me, and I just wanted to see if my grandson would recognize me at 7 months. You know, just walking on the street, not coming in the door. And the change in his face from just seeing somebody in the double take was priceless. So that was you can't get a better feeling than that. So anyway, I'll just leave it there. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, I'm sad there's not too many people, but happy that it's you guys. So
Jaswinder didn't check in yet.
oh wait, he did, right? He said, that is my chicken. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. So the Talanoa, the good news is most of you are familiar with it. Joel, I think your first day with us was a Talanoa.
Without knowing, without meaning today.
I know. But just to recap, it is a Fijian dialogue. And it is, I put some stuff in the chat here, so I'll just reiterate. It means to hold a conversation in an inclusive, receptive space. It's a traditional method solving problems and differences in the Pacific. And through the process, it brings a lot to the table. And the process of the Talanoa is storytelling. So the idea is you tell a story. And for those of you who are not very well versed at telling stories, it's one of those age-old ways of communicating and passing down historical information. You just talk about an event that happened to you as it relates to the topic. And no one is allowed to talk about your story. When you tell your story, only you have the floor. And you do your best to support one another. Remain, silent, yet listen, really listen. Because the Talanoa, what it does is it helps create a connection. It helps create a connection through empathy. And right now our topic is about bullying. So I put here a really long quote from one of the professors somewhere in the South Pacific. But I liked it in particular because when you're instructed not to talk and only one person is talking, then it kind of teaches you how to listen. And a lot of people like listening to stories. So please, when you share your story, share something personal that happened to you. Try to stray away from hypothetical third person, you know, because we've got too much of that now. And if you want to start, the floor is yours. But before we do that, Stacey, do you want to add something?
Yes, I also wrote in the chat that Kayla and I are going to do our best to support the guidelines introduced for each round, which she just said, which is basically keeping the stories about yourself in the first person. And for this reason, you might get interrupted. So I'm setting up why I might interrupt you. There's not enough people that I think it's going to be necessary to do it privately, but one of the things that I mentioned before the call was that it might be interesting if people wanted a reminder, like privately in a private chat. This would have been the point where I would have said, you know, do you want a reminder if you're going off course privately? And then I would have asked you to open your chat box, but I don't think that's going to be necessary for this small group. And the other thing I just wanted to say is that I wanted to do the topic of bullying because I think it's an important one. And as Kayla already pointed out, part of what this method does is increase empathy. But I also, I decided that I'm going to try and focus on a time when I did the bullying, because I think that what happens is it's very easy. It's usually easier for women to talk about a time when they were bullied, and everybody says, "Oh, how brave you are! You know, that's wonderful." Conversely, it seems to be more difficult for some men to talk about when they were bullied, because again, it's these different cultural expectations. But either way, whether you choose to talk about when you were bullied or when you did the bullying, it's a good thing because it's all about self-awareness. And the second part is that the second round, you'll have an opportunity, not the first time, but the second time, you'll have an opportunity to say what you would have done different, what you might have done differently, and then we'll go on from there. Okay, Sam?
So my question is, if we have one or two or three stories, should we tell them all at the same time, or should we tell one and then wait for the round and then possibly do another round?
Yes, tell one and wait for the, you can mention that you have another one, but you'll wait for the next round. This way we'll know that we want to have another round.
Good.
Good question. Good question.
Kind of like the first session when I did the Black Lives Matter one, where we all just kind of waited. And the idea was, I liked it that way because it reminded me of when we would actually hold informal Talanoas all the time among me and my friends, and there was island music playing in the background, and we were passing around kava, and we just for hours would just talk story. That's what we called it, talk story. And then when there was enough kava being passed around, that's when we would go, okay, what are we gonna do about this now? So with that, let's talk story. Who wants to start?
So wait, start. Does Talanoa literally translate to talk story? Is that what it means?
No. I was trying to find the exact meaning because believe it or not, I know more Samoan, Tongan, Hawaiian, and Tahitian words, but Fijian words, no. And then I get all weird about the correct pronunciation.
Okay.
I'll find it if somebody wants to begin.
Good girl. We'll have some chocolate. No. Talk to them.
Desmond, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Ranjot wants it.
Colin's coming in again.
Oh, you can't stay here and make a noise. Give it to me.
Okay. All right. Since Jaswinder's distracted, I'll go. I'll go first. Okay. And I think I may have one or two other stories, but I'll start with this one, which is probably in my late teens or early 20s, okay? When I was growing up, I didn't know anything about Taiwan because when I was 5, I came to the United States and then was immersed in US culture, American culture. So I barely spoke Taiwanese as a 5-year-old. But once I got into college, I got more and more interested in my heritage, my background. And so in my senior year, I took a political science class and wrote about the Taiwan independence movement, which is a big deal in Taiwan because there's China, there's the US, there's a bombing, there's all kinds of oppression, there's the Japanese. But anyway, the point is that I spent an entire year really immersed in learning about Taiwanese history and culture, to the extent that I wrote a 30, 40 page, something like 33 or 35 page paper that my political science teacher actually asked me to publish in some political science journal because he said he had never known about that situation in as much detail that Taiwan was in. So 2 aspects of bullying come into this. One was when I told my family that, my teacher thought well of my work and I really wanted to publish this thing, my family came back with a resounding no, you cannot publish this paper. And I thought, why not? And the reason being that much of it was critical to the Kuomintang, the ruling political party in Taiwan, and that my family in Taiwan would immediately suffer repercussions if I was known to have published this thing that was critical of the government of Taiwan. At that time, Taiwan was still under martial law. And so they felt that they would be, I don't know, all kinds of repercussions. People actually disappeared from the island, if they spoke out against the government, never to be seen again. So that was widespread knowledge. So unfortunately, I was not able to publish that, and I no longer have a copy of that paper, but I really missed that. So the second aspect of the bullying, so that's one aspect, is that the government and the local authorities would have come down hard, and that was just known. It was just not a debatable topic. It would have happened, okay? But the second part of it is I was so interested in this whole phenomenon that I started attending Taiwanese independence movements in the United States. These were, expats would gather and talk about how we could bring about Taiwanese independence. The thing I found really interesting is that the Kuomintang, the ruling political party, would send their own people pretending to be independence movement people that would then attend these conferences, but they would then cause insurgents. In a particular case, I was walking either towards the meeting or from the meeting to my car, and one of these guys came right up to me, put their head in their mouth like within inches of my ear, and while I was walking was yelling in my head, in my ear, "What do you think about Taiwan independence? You really gonna do this? Is it good? Come on, try it." And tried to provoke me into a fight, tried to provoke me into doing something. There were like 2 or 3 of them just following me down the street. And if I had even turned to react, I think I would have given them an excuse to take, some defensive move. So these kind of tactics are very, very common. In fact, there's dozens of these cases, maybe hundreds of these documented cases of the Kuomintang sending people to bully people who were interested in Taiwan independence. So this happened in my early 20s, and I just thought that KMT has such reach. It's going into a deeply, heavily populated part of the United States and causing this kind of this issue. Imagine what they're doing elsewhere in the world where there are large pockets of Taiwanese. Anyway, so that's one story I just wanted to relay to you guys. I don't think I've ever told that story here in GCC ever before. Okay. Thank you for listening.
Well, I do apologize for being distracted. It's kind of odd. How do they know that I don't want to be disturbed and they come and disturb me? That's bullying, that is. Since I read what was written by Kayla Schumer, I just had another quick look at it. Several days ago, and I applied it to myself, and I weighed the to's and the fro's, the good and the bad of bullying from my early childhood to being a grown-up adult. And the overall picture I get of myself is that it has been good for me. It has taken me to the direction of being good to others, actions which are good for others. I was a very bonny babe. I do remember my mother telling me that. And I do remember some odd little ditties of when I was very, very little. I was also a very inquisitive babe. I remember that also, which got me into lots of trouble. Over a period of time, I tended, for some reason, I lost the actual fat I had. And that happened, I was born in Uganda, and by the age of, just after starting primary school, we went to India because my maternal grandma had died, and Mom insisted that she wanted to have a trip to India. So obviously monies were saved, and Mom and the two younger siblings, me and my younger brother, we went by train from Uganda to Mombasa, overnight train, probably more than 24 hours on the train. And then a ship, which took about 2 or 3 weeks to get to, I don't know which port, but certainly Mumbai probably would have been the port, Bombay. And it was in India, in the Punjab, that I was really physically ill. The weather, the climate just didn't suit me. It was just too hot, too dry, or too wet. And we stayed there at least 18 months, if not more. I remember going to school there. By the time I went to school, I was skinny. By the time I came back to Uganda, I was very skinny. And I was timid because I'd been bullied in India. And I was bullied in Uganda too. At the age of 12 and 3/4, I arrived in the UK. And I was bullied in the UK because I was skinny and I was brown. And there weren't many colored kids in the school. In the class I was in, there was only one black boy who looked more brown than black, me, an Indian. In the whole school, there couldn't have been more than a dozen colored children, Indians and blacks. So I was bullied there. But the overall picture I get out of that is that I either stood up for myself or somebody reported the bullying or a teacher saw it happening and it put me in good stead overall. And the other thing that I did as a defense mechanism is I became a teacher's pet. The English teacher, Mr. Kingston, who seemed to take a liking to me, when he was in the playground, I would go and play close to him. Or when we were out in the sun, reading and writing in the sunlight, I tend to be close to him. The chemistry teacher in the UK, Mr. Good, he died about 3 years ago. He was a very good man as well. Quite liked him, and he was very kind to me. At any rate, all the instances of the bullying and the crying and standing up for myself, even later on when I went into work situations, it only brought the best out in me. I'll give you an instance of working in a store, and people would come obviously to collect items from the store. And the storekeeper, that was me, who ordered the stuff, who got it ready and put it out. And if the orders weren't right, there were obviously grumblings. And one particular person, I think it was a supervisor or a junior supervisor at any rate, he threatened me. And the boss's daughter, unknown to him and me, was around the corner, either coming or going. And she stopped to listen to the conversation. And this young whippersnapper threatened to kick 7 colors of shit out of me. And I thought about it for a moment. I thought, well, there's no point in me getting aggressive with this. I just asked him a question, you know. And I suppose you think that I'm going to let you do that. In other words, I'd be expected to defend myself. And I don't think he didn't have an answer for that. So overall, it kind of then transposed that to the world situation. That's not because of what Sam said, that's somewhere I went. And I hadn't finished all this thinking till yesterday and this morning, actually. And overall, the situation of what is war good for and what is peace good for, they have two different outcomes. Europe has been fortunate in that the post-war setup has given it now nearly 80 years of peace. Western Europe and most of Eastern Europe has enjoyed 80 years of peace. Western Europe has become very wimpish, complaining, softy. The USA has been in war for the past 270 odd years, 276 or 77, since its incubation, really. And it's a very tough country. Europe, the Americans are very tough people. Peace produces a lot of educated people, a lot of learned people, a lot of scholars. War produces a lot of warriors. We have to weigh up the two. In any society, that these items have to be balanced, and we have to get the balance as good as is possible so that each and every person, you have a Stacey?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask you if you could go back to just focusing on the I for this part, and you can go on to what you're talking about in another session.
Overall, the person that is Jaswinder Singh Chadha, has been quite a benevolent person. When I think back of the situations where people who I have worked with or worked under, and even if they've been nasty to me, when they've needed help, regardless of their attitude towards me, they've received that help. Even today, I will do that. And people have accused me of being a softie, and I don't think I am a softie. I think it's the other way around. It takes some special courage to stand against the normal kind of attitude that he's been nasty to you for the last 3 years. Why are you helping him? Because he needs it. It's as simple as that. If I, for arguments, took it the other way around, if somebody ran out of petrol or broke down on the road or somewhere, and I happened to have the item required, would I not be obliged to hand it over? To help the person to get out of whatever difficulty they're in? I think I would be, even if that person wouldn't do it for me.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is the attitude that it has brought out in me. I do remember one particular instance where I was very young then. I was
Can we save that for the second round?
Sure. I'm complete.
And one other thing, there's somebody waiting in the waiting room. I don't know if anybody's verified who he is. I didn't want to let him in without knowing.
What's his name?
Dennis?
Oh, that's my friend. Come let him in.
Okay.
Thanks, Jaswinder. I just wanted to give others an opportunity to speak. If you want to tell stories. And if anybody wants to go next, you can raise your hand. But
Joel just unmuted.
oh, okay.
Okay, so some of you already know I was bullied most of my school years, but there was something I watched when I was young. I can't remember what it was, but the sort of older character was talking to a younger one who was being bullied and exiled. And he said sometimes leaders need to be separated from those they will lead in the future or something like that, because it changes how they see things. And it always stuck with me. I never thought I'd ever be a leader, but being separated from everyone else, how everybody else was living their life, I always sort of noticed how I saw things differently because I was being bullied and exiled and alienated. My view of everything that was going on was very different to the people living the experiences. And for a lot of my life, I didn't really understand it until I got older and I'd watched enough of it to learn and understand how the people were seeing it in their own mind. So I learned from being bullied that sometimes it can give you a perspective that other people can't understand, even if they try to. It's not having seen things from that kind of outside perspective and noticing the little nuances that are causing the problems between people. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I just find that kind of interesting how the separation can sometimes be important to give you that external view. I'm done. Hi, Dennis.
Hi there.
Hi, Dennis.
So Dennis is my friend. We've been friends for like 12 plus years. Some of you met him last Friday when we did the appreciation. Um, I'm sorry, Joel. Are you done? Yeah. Okay. So just for the sake of Dennis popping in, we're doing what's called the Talanoa dialogue, which is a Fijian dialogue. And right now we're in the storytelling round of it. And so the idea is you share a story on the topic, a personal story is something that's happened in the past. Um, and everybody just goes around and they tell their story. We leave the third person hypothetical out of it until we come to the question sections. And one of the questions we have, in the future, in future rounds, is what would you have done different? But for now, unless somebody else wants to go, I can tell a story too. So, anyone? Anyone?
Go for it.
Okay, this one's just happened to me, and it was a very sad thing that happened. One of my very, very good friends for many, many, many years, who is also the granddaughter of a woman that is like a grandmother to me who just passed away. Um, anyways, this is the granddaughter of a family that I'm very very close to, and this woman was a very, very good friend. We danced together. We were in the front line together. I mean, there was four of us, and she was one of them. And during our dancing years, we were always together. So last summer, I wanted to go on a solo hike, and I put on my Facebook, I'm going to the Bridge to Nowhere. And the Bridge to Nowhere is a hike here in California. It's anywhere between 6 to 8 hours. And I'd never been there before. So I put, I'm going to the bridge to nowhere. Does anybody have any advice for me? And so my friend's ex-husband had wrote and said, you shouldn't go alone. That's my advice. So because we'd all known each other for all of our lives, he was kind of like a friend to me too. And, you know, I'd seen him with her at another event before. So I knew they were amicable because they have children. And I know that he was following me on Facebook and following my blogs and kind of reaching out to me because he was having a hard time with this divorce. So I private messaged him and I said, hey, if you want to go, let's go. And we end up going. The entire time he was talking about his wife and oh my gosh, anything he wasn't talking about, she was the entire topic. It was fine. I mean, this man wouldn't touch me. He wouldn't even help me up a rock. And that was it. We were just two friends hiking. So a month later, I called my friend Elima and I said, hey, happy birthday. It happened to be her birthday. And we were just talking. And I said, by the way, I went on a hike with Brian. You know, Brian is her ex-husband. And at the time, well, let's just back up. So I told her, I went on a hike with Brian. Don't worry. You know, we weren't really talking so much about you. And holy crap, she flipped out. Why would you go on a hike with him? What are you trying to do? And then she got really quiet and she goes, I need to get off the phone with you because I'm going to be really, really upset right now. I'm about to go ballistic. So I was like, okay, I'm really sorry. And then she said, well, if you were really sorry, you wouldn't have gone. And then I said, no, you know, I have nothing but love for you. And she said, well, if you really did have love for me, you would never have asked him. You would never have gone. Okay. All right. Gave her space. A month later, I get text after text after text. You're toxic. I hate you. You're a bitch. Blah, blah, blah. You're ruining my family. You guys have had accusing me of having had an affair. Don't ever come back to the studio again or I'm going to kick your ass. It was just really strange, bizarre. And the next morning I woke up to her tagging me on Facebook, tagging my business on Facebook. This woman is a snake. She'll steal your family. She'll do this and that. And oh my gosh, it was so shameful. I just remember breaking down and crying because A, it wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. And B, you know, knowing the weight of her family and my friends and my group and my reputation, I just felt like everything just went down the drain then. So luckily and sadly for her, everybody in her family knew she was just going crazy or something. And they all stood up for me, including her daughter. She had publicly stood up for me. But I had never felt that way about somebody. Well, actually, no. I take that back. There have been people that I cared about who have viciously attacked me like that before. But yeah, that feeling. I never want to have that feeling again. Anyway, I'm complete.
Colin? Are you there? Okay. Oh, he's connecting. He must have had issues. You're muted, Colin.
Hey, Stacey, just a quick question. Your microphone seems to bring a distorted tone to your voice. Is anybody else hearing that?
How about if I move closer? Is this better or it's still no
Seems
better?
to be less. Yeah.
That's why I
I was
tried.
curious whether your sensitivity on your microphone is it pushed all the way to the max. Sometimes that causes it.
This microphone is built in and I have no idea how to.
Okay. Actually, now it seems fine.
I'll try to lean in. I think
Sorry if that's uncomfortable.
that's okay. Colin, did you want to go? Okay, I'll go then. Yeah, I started out saying that I was going to talk about a time that I bullied, but after hearing like what Sam and Jaswinder are saying about that person that he trusted, you know, the teacher that he stayed with, and I want to do something different because, so my whole life, I've also always stuck up for the underdog. So that's why I thought it was, you know, that's why I had wanted to focus on like looking at myself and why, you know, when I bullied, because obviously when I did it, I didn't see it as being a bully. And that's why it stayed with me, because I felt so horrible that I had done it. Yeah, actually, maybe I will tell the story now since I started. Yeah, it's a very simple story, and I'm looking forward to round 2 to tell the other one. But this one, I was 24 years old. I was a young school teacher, and I was working in a very marginal area where, for whatever reason, the parents really weren't involved in the education, and school was not a priority. And I had a brighter group of kids. And again, I was very idealistic. I took a lot of pressure from older teachers who had been doing it forever, and they wanted me to do it their way. And there were parts of their way that I wanted to do, but there were other parts of my own. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. The important part is that I really wanted these kids to be doing their homework. And being a young teacher, it was really important for me to establish some sort of dynamics where I didn't have kids constantly calling me out. And for the most part, the kids liked me, so that was kind of easy to do. But there was this one young girl, and she was very bright. She was really, really very bright. I didn't know anything about her home life. Everything I just described to you, I didn't even realize, you know, those things then. I was 24. I wasn't thinking about what people's home lives were like. But anyway, this was probably like the third time that, Alex is here. It was probably the third time that she hadn't done her homework. And in my mind, this was not good for the other kids to see her getting away with it. And I really didn't know what to do, because there was like nothing that I saw would be a way to get her to conform to doing her homework. And so I used the other kids by calling attention. What really happened, I recognize now that it triggered me, is that she used this ridiculous excuse of having to wash her hair. And I think I had my own trigger inside of me, like, you know, like, come on, you know? And so I used the other children to, you know, and I kind of was like, who believes that? You know, and I embarrassed her. That was the end result. I embarrassed her. And then it was over, and I hadn't thought about it very much. But I had this older paraprofessional in the room. And Alec, where's all that noise coming from? Colin, is that noise from you?
That is, sorry.
Okay. I had this older professional, and again, the dynamics were very strange. There were dynamics that had to do with race involved and age involved. But so I was talking to the professional about what happened, and she pointed out to me that what I did was totally wrong. And I was like, because here I was going into this situation, trying to like really do the best I could in a loving way. So for her to call me on that and explain how I had embarrassed this child, it really broke me. I mean, you know, it was 34 years ago, and I still think about it today. So aside from that episode, though, which I learned from it, you know, I definitely learned from it. I think that where I had been bullied many, many times in my life, to Joel's point, definitely made me more empathetic. And I'll save my next story for the next round because I want that to tie into having somebody that you can trust. I'm complete. And welcome, Alex.
So Alex, just in case you didn't get the gist of it, we are doing a Talanoa on bullying. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but it's just basically storytelling, telling your story about, if you want, how you were bullied in some way, shape, or form.
Or bullied. Or
done the
any
bullying.
experience that you've had with bullying that you choose to share.
Yeah. And then
When I was, and
Oh,
then
go
what? When I was at school, and the teacher asked the class if anybody had white spots under their fingernails. To say it's a sign of too much calcium or a lack of calcium in the blood or something. And I put my hand up because I had these white spots under my nails, and she said, "Come up the front." So I marched up the front, and she took my hand and held it up to the class. And she said, "Here's the boy who doesn't clean his fingernails," because I had dirt under my fingernails. And I felt shattered, I really felt shattered, as if my trust had been betrayed. And I didn't get over that for a long time. That sort of stuck with me for quite a while. So I think that was an inappropriate gesture on the teacher's part to do that in front of the whole class. My self-esteem just went zunk, Anyway, that's not really bullying, but it's an example of how somebody else's simple actions can affect you. And I was about 7 or 8 years old, I think. Over.
that's bullying.
Dennis, did you have a story you wanted to share?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. I'll sit on it if I can for a little bit.
Colin?
I have many. Which category would you like? What context?
Pick one and then wait for round 2 for the rest.
The one I want to tell you about, I've already said a little bit about it, and I've thought about it, and it's a really good one, but it's too recent, and it's too close to my personal life, so I don't want to share it. But I would off camera.
So pick another one.
With my Talanoa buddies. And I've thought about, well, what about having something that I feel bullied in the GCC, which would be context sensitive, because I really appreciate Joel's message. I think Joel recognizes some things in me that I may recognize in him, just maybe experiences growing up where you weren't always in the in crowd. So you had lots of opportunities to learn to think twice.
So can you share one of those?
Well, I had a couple, if not 3, older kids in the town that used to like to pick on me when they were bored. And I also had friends around there too, and I could see the cowardice in them not stepping in to help me, because it's entertainment, right? When you're the chicken. But Joel's right. It does grow your stronger skin, and luckily I had a very caring household to grow up in, so I knew the difference. So yeah, and so I guess generally speaking, I don't think I've had any physical bullying like Sam explained. I'm not going to refer to his story, but that was after he was 20, which is like more of a university adult setting, right? Where you're expected. It's different. You become an adult, and then when you get physically bullied as an adult, it's not just kids playing around. I'm not saying that that's not bad and not dangerous, but I think it's more of an offense, the bullying that Sam would have experienced, over 20 that I experienced under 20. Not saying it didn't affect me as much growing up, but I think having good examples of what caring is. Now, if I would have been growing up in a household where, you know, there was a lot of dysfunction and a lot of violence, then maybe I would have turned out a lot different. I'm not sure about that. Might have took me a lot longer to straighten around because I do have a certain amount of ability to fight back in me, and so. But yeah, I think bullying and lying are the two things I kind of draw as top level offenses in the Humanist Manifesto.
Well, in this round, we want to stick to our stories. And Kayla, did you want to?
Well, that is my story of actually trying to direct people to the Humanist Manifesto, so that, because I guess the other one I would tell next round would be about the mental bullying I experienced as a kid and where that might have come from, because there's different kinds of bullying, and then there's social bullying too, right? So, and anyway, yeah, so bullying, I think, is a part of life growing up as a kid, but there seems to be a vicious line, so where it turns from teasing into something that really scars you mentally. So the punches, the bruises will heal, right? So it's the mental damage that I think you gotta really come up with. And,
Did you want to share one of those?
I look forward.
Did you want to share one of those now, real quick?
Well, I can. I've shared it before, and I bet you everybody in this room can guess it.
No. I'm talking about, you said from when you were younger.
Yeah. In fact, I had a whole appreciators on it about 2 months ago, and it's bullying of authority. Really, you could just classify it under there, where authority is going to teach you and mold you and tell you you're bad when really you're not. And it's sad when time reveals that, as I'm sure people who persevere, or shall I say, stay alive, come to realize that a lot of the bullying done against you wasn't really about you. It was about the other person, and how violent it is, and how you get to name it. And when you're older, and say, you know, like I think Joel said, it makes you stronger.
I really apologize for interrupting, but we really want to try to stay with the actual story. And Kayla, you wanted to add something?
Yes. You know, I was telling Stacey, when we would do Talanoas among my friends and I, we got really good at just sharing our stories. And it was first person. These are the experiences that we've had, you know, stories. But
Right.
One thing I wanted to say is regarding the Talanoa, why it's so successful and used in the UN is because it creates this human connection. When you tell a personal story, whatever it is, whatever type of bullying, there's all kinds of forms of bullying, which I think that's why Stacey brought this up, because, you know, it's not just a Me Too, a Black Lives Matter, you know, corporations against individuals. It's just blanket all around. And to hear somebody's personal story is a gift. You know, it's uncomfortable, I know, for a lot of people. Nobody wants to share a really painful moment of themselves. But the Talanoa is here to say, okay, this is your time to share it. No one's going to judge you. No one's going to talk about your story. You know, I think Jez Winder's seen me cry. You know, so it's just a safe place, and I know you might not have come in, but it's the very first part of the chat here. It means to hold a conversation in an inclusive, receptive space. So my friends and I really discourage, and I know the community is discouraged too, hypothetical third person, because we can get to that during the question portion of it. So I just wanted to
Yeah,
make that clear.
I appreciate that, and people who know me here know that I resist from getting too personal. And despite that, we're still becoming friendly and knowing each other, which I do think is important. But doing it in public is not my style.
Then you can
Second
pass
thing,
on,
second
you
thing,
can pass
second
on
thing.
this
No, hold
round,
on, hold
Colin.
on. That doesn't mean that I can't resist the form that's been given to me and ask if I can put myself into it, knowing that that's the way I am. As Joel said, don't bully me out of my form.
In round 2, can you do
Well,
that
the
in
thing
round
is,
2 instead?
but I'd just like to cover that. I think what I was trying to impress upon my experience wasn't the actual punches. It was the fear and mental damage while you know somebody's coming to get you, or you're in trouble, or we're going to see you after school. You know, it's the mental damage that you remember. The details are, you know, I can tell you any story you want. I'm more of a takeaway kind of guy. I want the lessons learned. You know, I want to know where we're going with this and what context we can put it in. And I will try to find some part of my person that I can share that I don't mind, because I do believe in what Kayla said, that could help a lot of people. But it's just not, it's not my style to be giving details that aren't necessary. And I've learned to keep the details away. Get to the point. Don't digress into the whiny, right? So, because you can do that. And I can talk about a bullying incident here. I think since Alex is here, I think we could do where I felt bullied by Alex. He might not even know it. So, you know, I could do that one next. That one's fine. It's recorded. I'd like to find it though, because for some reason, I can't find the recording of it. Or the one where Tammy was ripping my head off.
All right, you know what?
Tearing me a new asshole.
Okay. So does somebody have their second round story that they'd like to share? Sam.
Okay, so I mentioned that I was about 5 years old when I got to the US. And I lived for 2 years in California, then 2 years in Baltimore, and then 6 years in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So when I got to Albuquerque, New Mexico, I was in 4th grade. And so I was what, maybe 9, 8, something like that. 9 probably. And in Albuquerque, I don't remember another Asian family in the town, except I do remember, okay, so there was one, but they were like in the outskirts of town. And, you know, I mean, I think my parents had to look really hard to find another Asian family. So people in school called me names that you would find silly now. You know, they called me chink, they called me nigger, they called me, you know, all kinds of other racial epithets. They didn't even know what an Asian was. Not, you know, and of course didn't differentiate between Taiwanese and Chinese and other kinds of Asians. So during that whole period, there was just a lot of small little incidents. I'd be walking home from school and spit would come onto my head from somebody up in the trees that was just waiting for me. I would get pushed up against the wall and my pockets turned out. And occasionally my lunchbox would be opened and, you know, food taken from it. So I think that was just periodically. I was always, you know, like wondering where the next thing was going to come next. I think probably the worst thing that happened was I was walking home from school one day and a rock, pretty good sized rock, hit me on the side of the head, right here, and the side of my head was actually bleeding. And there were some kids that had actually obviously thrown the rock, and I was only like a block or so from home, so I managed to get home. And when my dad saw me, he was as irate and as furious as I've ever seen him. So he immediately went out to go confront those kids. And if it weren't for a neighbor who saw what happened and stopped my dad, I think he would have probably done something violent to those kids. But he did stop. but I've never seen him that violent. At the time, I really sincerely did not really understand what would provoke somebody to do that. They didn't explain. They were just laughing, these kids. And they didn't even go away. They felt like nobody was going to, take any action against them until my dad came out. So that whole period was just one after another after another. I mean, I could go on and on, but there's just small little things, instantaneous little things, but just fairly frequent and fairly common and fairly regular, I would say. So that's why it's not a whole story, it's just a bunch of little data points. Okay, thanks.
Anybody? Sorry, my dance teacher used to do that. I could see you.
Jazzwinder's ready.
Well, I think I'm pretty much complete, really. It's just the kernel of this is bullying. And overall, I can only talk about myself, how it did have some tremendous, how shall I put it, moments, days, months even, where I had to deal with it and either stand up for myself or for somebody else or do something to alleviate the situation. One of the things I found that really brings it home to me even now is that thinking about something that does not have an immediate solution, a day or two or a week or so, it occupies the thinking pattern for a long period, and that's depressing, because a large chunk of the thought power is missing. It is employed doing something else when it should be doing something useful. And it happens here, even today, if I'm occupied with thinking about one thing, I cannot be thinking about something else at the same time. So in order to overcome that, there were many, many sleepless nights of trying to find the solution. And the solution has to be that there has to be some bravery somewhere to react in a favorable way, where the bullying would be alleviated or lessened or somehow not causing so much blockage. And that really stuck with me even through the divorce situation, where there was no bullying there. It was a case of, how the heck am I going to manage? There's this to do, that to do. The answer comes in the doing. Once the situation is upon that, you have to get up in the morning, get yourself washed and dressed, and get your children washed, dressed, get your homework in the bags ready, into the car, and off you go. And if you haven't got a bag, you can't turn back. That's it. You have to go to the school without your bag for that day. So it's a very sharp, steep learning curve. And that part I really liked. And it stood me in good stead. So that part also gave me an insight into others. If somebody is going through a bad time for whatever, the reason doesn't really matter, because these things happen and they will happen. And if I can in any way, shape or form alleviate any of that, even partially, then it's a very good thing. And where that took me, I can obviously orate that, but it took me to somewhere where it's a superb place. And it took me to yesterday to something that Sam had said, and then somebody else had said, and it all collated in that wonderful space where there is everything and nothing at the same time. It all coalesced. And I was very grateful for somebody posing that situation, that question, whoever that was, and the pair of you. I think I spent a whole few days, probably a week, mulling over these things. At times it was heavy. It was walking back with the children from school. I felt heavy with the thought. And I thought, this is a light thought. Why should they be heavy? Because I'm preoccupied. Even if it is a good thinking process, I'm weighing myself down. Come back to the moment, what I should be doing now. So I'm mighty grateful and obliged even. And it's taken me to a different place as well in how I should engage, probably. And that remains to be seen whether that actually takes place. I think that's my second party, and I'm not sure whether I want to do the third party, because that would be...
I'll go then. Okay, I'll go. If I could just share, Sam, can I just share the chat that what you just sent me?
Sure.
Yeah, so Sam, like I said in the beginning, I was gonna try to be the person to say, hey, we gotta stay with story. So Sam just texted me, is this sticking with story? And the reason I'm bringing, okay, so let me backtrack a little bit, because this is really hard for me to do based on my experiences with bullying. So as Jaswinder had mentioned earlier, he was talking about having that person there in the schoolyard that made him feel safe. Back in 2016, do we know, oh, Tyra, hold on, let me let Tyra in. Back in 2016, when I was going through a divorce, I was going through a lot of bullying with friends. So, I mean, really foolish things that you wouldn't expect grown-ups to do, like accidentally putting me on a group chat where they're talking about me. Stuff like that. And I got very involved with just being online and the politics of what was going on then. And I noticed that there was a lot of bullying going on online. And I wound up finding this, or being pulled into this group called Pantsuit Nation. And some of you may have heard about it. And it started out with mostly women. And what it was is they didn't feel safe talking in the public airways because they would get attacked and bullied. How this wound up affecting me is that I was out in the public spaces saying what I had to say, even if it was hard to say, and there was nobody there to have my back. So it was really tough, but I felt I still needed to be a voice. But in the groups, what was happening is there were a lot of people who didn't have that same strength, and they were sharing their stories. And those of us that did have the strength were trying to build them up. And we had this thing, and it was the idea of a safety pin. And in the real world, we would wear safety pins on our shirts or safety pins on our collars, so that if people in the real world that felt marginalized for whatever reason, like let's say they were sitting at a bus stop and they felt intimidated because the climate had grown so hostile, they would see our safety pin and they would know that they could turn to us and we would be an ally to them. And I mean, it was really beautiful. And part of how the bonding occurred, which is why I'm so much of a fan of this type of platform when we share stories, is that we listened to each other's stories and we really, you know, we became committed to each other. But anyway, so the whole thing, being somebody that tries to stand up against bullying is a really hard thing to do. And it's hard for me a lot. I mean, it's hard. Okay, I want to stay in the I. I notice that I try to stay around people that will step in when someone else is having a hard time for whatever reason, because that makes me feel safer. I guess I'm complete for now. I don't want to go in a tangent, but little things I do want to say one thing. What gave me strength is the private messages I got from people thanking me. Because as scary as it was for me to speak up on somebody else's behalf and not become a bully doing it, like not becoming a bully doing it, as hard as it was, when people would thank me for it, it fed me. It really did. It fed me. And I enjoy being around people that do that too. Now I'm complete.
Thank you, Stacey. I saw Alex's hand up. I wanted to share a story too, but I also wanted to say hi, Tyra. If you want to share a story, we're doing a Talanoa. I think I messaged you on bullying. And then, of course, there's Dennis and Joel. You guys have been quiet. And Colin, I want to honor everybody's silence. That's absolutely fine. But with that, there's Alex and then me, if no one else wants to go.
Well, there's a situation where you're being bullied and you can get caught up in the emotion and the need to respond or the need to flee. And
story. Is this a story for one of your stories?
Yeah, I was trying to work out how to react to how to respond to the government bullying me when they overpowered the chief medical officer sort of thing because of a biased interest in the manufacturing plants. And I discovered through research that some papers were published, like in the British Medical Journal and some other prestigious medical journals. So I found out that walking like pedestrians suffered more deaths than cyclists. It was just as dangerous to walk as it was to ride on a bicycle. So I thought, why did they want cyclists to wear helmets? And it was odd that I discovered further on that some of the helmets were causing an increase in rotational brain damage. So I pulled the government up. I said to the government, I'm not going to wear one of these helmets. They're not suitable for children anyway, outdoors in Australia. You've got to wear the recommended sun hats for UV protection. And the government said, we don't care. We've got this law and we want you to wear a helmet, you'll wear a helmet. So I said, well, okay, I've had skin cancer and I don't want to get more of it. And the risk is getting more of it's greater than the risk of having an accident. So it's a matter of risk assessment. And the government don't care. They just want to force me to toe the line and to shut up and behave. So I used a tool I learned in the 12-step program when I was recovering from heavy drinking, and that was letting go, because resentments are a deadly thing for people who have emotional issues. Resentments are killers for people trying to get sober from an addiction. And it's like having a gun, holding a gun to your own head, hoping the other person suffers. That's what a resentment is. It's renting the other person's space in your head. So to keep it in the eye.
Were you holding on to that I'm just jumping in just to help you out a little bit to focus on you. Were you holding on to that resentment of feeling bullied?
No, I was letting it go. I was trying to let it go. At the same time, I needed to focus on my part in the issue. Was I doing the right thing by letting it go? Was it fair to the other kids who were getting exposed to UV wearing these stupid helmets, even though they might be slightly better off in a car accident with the vehicle? There was still an increased risk of rotational brain injury because these helmets grab on impact with the road. They grab and twist, and kids they get an increase in neck injuries and sort of that sort of thing. But I thought, well, I shouldn't let it go. And how do I cope with that? I used that tool called, there's a three-part tool that focuses on everything we do in life. Every decision we make in life has got three parts, and it's what's wrong. There's three decisions we make every moment. What's wrong? Why is it wrong? And what am I going to do about it? So that was a very simple way to use that tool. I knew what was wrong, I knew why it was wrong, and I knew what to do about it. So that sort of lifted the whole burden from my shoulders. It lifted that weight and made me able to focus on what needed to be done and to get out there and do it without having to worry about the consequences, because I'd analysed the situation pretty thoroughly before I moved on it, before I acted. Made sure that I'd covered all the bases, you know, and pinned all the pins into the charts and linked the dots, joined the dots, and I come up with this issue, this picture. It was the government had an investment in the plastics manufacturing industries in China, and the Chinese were donating millions of dollars to the political campaign funds. So the chief medical officer had a bias over the issue. The pedestrians didn't have to wear helmets, and yet more pedestrians are killed than cyclists. So they didn't want to face that issue. They're running and hiding now. Anyway, I did my part, and I feel better off for it. The bullying was the arrests by the police and trying to force me to wear a helmet. It's government bullying from a high level. Over.
Sam?
I think it's Stacey. I think it's Kayla next.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw your hand go up.
So I'll give you an example of how I bully. So I've been gifted that wonderful trait that my father has of sarcasm. I mean, he made fun of us all his life, and it used to make me cry. Oh my gosh, I hated him until I was a teenager. Oh no, until I was a young adult, and then I grew to love him. But then with that, I inherited that wonderful trait of his wit and his ability to just make fun of you in a very demeaning way. So my kids, poor things. My oldest son, I remember we went to Las Vegas, and we flew to Las Vegas. And my oldest son, while we were taking off in the plane, let a silent but deadly one out. And oh my gosh, dude, it stank to high heaven. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, as if he could help himself, that poor kid. And I see the woman across the aisle going, and everybody is just, people close to us are doing this, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. You could tell he was very ashamed. So I don't know, must have been that trip, who knows. But we were in Las Vegas in a crowded bus, and we were going to see the fountains of the Bellagio, and he rips a silent but deadly one again in a closed bus as the doors were closing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, you couldn't hold it. And poor guy, he just, at that point, he put his head down, and he must have been 6-7 years old. So like a couple of months later, my friend and we had our 2 children with us, or she had her 2 kids and I had my 2 kids. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, remember the time when you totally farted on the plane and the bus and it was disgusting and blah, 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 blah. And I'm laughing and laughing and everyone's laughing. And oh, my poor son broke out and he started crying. And I'm like, what's wrong? You farted and that's, the end of the story. What's wrong with that? Crying and crying and crying and crying. So anyways, I told my sister, I said, I might have done something wrong. I might have actually hurt Damien's feelings. And so I told her, and she goes, oh yeah, you did it. You totally hurt his feelings. And she reminded me, remember Dad used to do that to us all the time. And remember how much he hated it? And then of course she's like, you're becoming like your dad, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But it's those examples of bullying that we really don't know sometimes, and it sucks that happened. It's very shameful. I'm hoping to God he doesn't remember. Like, I hope my half the things my kids don't remember, the times where I just bully them. But in the event that they do, I hope they remind me, because we really shouldn't be treating each other like this. And now that I have, and I'm sorry, I'll end with this. Now that I've stopped with the excessive bullying or the excessive making fun of my kids, our relationship has gotten much better. So, Sam, you're next.
Okay, this next story I think actually surprised me because again, it was in adulthood. When I left a particular company because my boss at the time invited me to start a company with him. He was a good guy, by the way. His name was Steve. We started a company in 1993, 94, something like that. And 6 months into the life of the company, his father was diagnosed with something and he was terminally ill. He had like 6 or 8 months to live. So my partner, Steve, decided that he couldn't continue with the company. He had to go and take care of his dad. We had a VC investment at the time. So the VCs and Steve started interviewing replacement CEOs. I trusted them. So I just said, you guys go do this. I'll go stick with operating the company. And I essentially ran the company while they just tried to find the CEO. And it took a long time. So they finally found this guy. And the initial months were great. It was just trying to learn the business, learn what was important, learn what the product was, etc. But as he became more and more confident and started to take more and more of the reins, more and more of his personality started to come through. And he ended up being a very traditional, strong kind of masculine personality. So there was this one time when I said, well, this makes sense. Why don't we do it this way? Would you like to consider it this way? He whips out his business card and says, you know what it says here? It says CEO. That's why we're doing it that way. That's one data point. Another data point was it was winter and we were going out to lunch. And I said, okay, I'll meet you at the front door. I'm going to go to my desk. I'm going to grab my jacket. We'll go. He says, what are you, a wimp? Why do you need your jacket? So 2 little data points. There were other data points, but this is like a grown man. This is somebody who had been vetted by VCs. So I thought, that's curious. Why would we see this in the workforce? Anyway, that's a short story that is from just a couple decades ago. Actually, 3 decades ago. Almost 3 decades ago now.
I just want to say before Tyra goes that we only have like a half an hour left. I'm going to skip my story because I'm hoping to get to the next part where I could give my perspective on whatever I've heard. And Tyra, go ahead.
This is Kayla's fault, by the way. It started with one margarita, Kayla. I had sent Kayla a text saying I was too hungover this morning to get on, and she's like, no, come on. So I apologize.
Have another one right now, Tyra.
Yeah. So I have a great bully story, and I want to start it with, as a woman, I was always taught to be polite, quiet, don't cause waves. And so throughout my life, I have felt just bullied because I didn't know how to stick up for myself. I didn't know I had a voice. I didn't know I could say no, especially with men. And I had a really bad day. I was in the mountains, and I decided to load up my dog, drive an hour and a half to this place out in the country where there are caves, chalk caves. And I wanted to check out chalk caves. And I'm in a bad mood. So I drive. I get there and I'm on this little dirt road going out. And just as I'm pulling into the parking space, this big pickup truck goes flying past me. And then he goes just down the way, a few hundred yards and parks. And then another pickup truck goes by and joins this guy. Now, this is definitely on my radar because now I'm a woman alone out there and two pickup trucks have just stopped and parked. So I'm like, la, 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 get my dog, I'm all set, and I start walking. And I'm keeping an eye on these guys. In fact, I'm talking to my friend on the phone, and I take a picture of the pickup trucks and said, I'm just going to send this to you in case I have some issues out here. So I'm walking, and all of a sudden, one of the trucks fires up, and it comes up to where I am. Coming in hot, coming in fast. And this guy pulls up, and dust is everywhere. And he's like, what are you doing out here? And I look at him, I'm like, wow, that's a great way to start this. And he's a typical Idaho guy who looks like maybe an ex-sheriff. He's in his 50s, maybe early 60s, big guy, big truck. And I said, I'm going to take a hike. He goes, well, how long are you going to be out here? And I'm not liking his attitude at all. And I'm real defensive. And I'm just like, I have no idea. And he goes, well, where are you going to go? I said, well, I'm going to wander up there. And he's like, oh, God damn it. We came out here to shoot. And we're setting our targets up there. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'm walking out here. So bye. Do whatever you want. And so the way he goes, dust in my face, gravel. And now I'm anxious because I know they're out there to shoot, target practice. So he's armed. He goes up ahead of me, right to the area where I said I'm going to go. And he sets up big targets. Back down he comes. He screeches right in front of me. And he goes, we're going to shoot. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be walking up there. And he goes, well, I don't want anybody to get accidentally shot. And I said, well, listen, if I get shot out here, I said, I have you on camera. And I had my phone out. And I said, I've got your license plates number. And so does my friend. So if I end up dead out here, they're going to come looking for you. And he's just like, what the hell's wrong with you? Blah, blah. And I looked at him, I said, listen, I just drove down an hour and a half from Sun Valley to go take a hike with my dog. It's open public lands here. And so I finally looked at him. I'm trying to calm down because now my voice is like super high. I feel intimidated. This guy's really mean. And I just looked at him and I said, why are you so angry? What the fuck do you mean? I said, why are you so angry with me? And he goes, well, you're from Sun Valley. You came all the way down. Then it became about me being from this bougie ski resort. Like I didn't qualify. And again, I just kept saying it. Why are you so angry? And oh my God, he got so mad that I wouldn't back down. I wouldn't get back in my car and leave. And this guy's head was about to explode. And he finally and I've got my camera right there. I'm like, smile, you're on candid camera. And away he goes. Now I'm scared to death because he's really, really mad. and I can see them with their guns pointed in my direction, like they're trying to intimidate me. So I get on the phone with the sheriff, call the sheriff. Long story short, after like 45 minutes of me basically hiding in the rocks with my dog, seeing what these guys, calling the sheriff to say, hey, I've got 2 armed guys out here. They're super hostile. Now I'm afraid they're going to shoot at me to intimidate me. So the guy gets back in his truck. He takes the target down. They get in their trucks and they head off down the road. But what I did was stand up to the guy. If I had just gotten back in my car, it would have been over. But I chose to stand up to him and say, why are you so angry? To put it back on him. And I find this is a really good tool with men when they are mansplaining me or angry with me or passive aggressive with me. I just call them out and say, why are you so angry today? Because it's not about me. It's about their shit. And I'm, you know, the 5'3" little lady that, you know, they can walk all over. And I don't ever let that happen anymore. I will kick anybody's ass with the ferocity of a rabid chihuahua. I mean, I'll go straight for your ankles. And men are so thrown by that. And I'm a very nice person and I don't have a temper. But if I see somebody else being bullied, if it's a kid, a woman, anybody, I am in their shit because I don't care if they hit me. Let them hit me. You know, I don't let people walk all over me anymore. And people know it now. They know, like, you know, she's not going to be a victim today. Thanks for letting me share that, considering I came in late.
Thank you. Did anybody else have a story before we go to the next? Like, I guess it would just be, in this case, summarizing or whatever perspective we want to share without rules.
I just wanted to, I'll be very quick, Sam. I just wanted to put the other perspective in. Yes, I was accused of becoming just like my wife's father when I was a father myself. So it is a delicate balance to be achieved at times, in that when there are children present and then I'm acting like a father should behave, and then I'm accused of doing the thing that her father probably did. Just kind of bring it home, but some discipline is necessary. I'm complete.
Sam, you wanted to say
I know I've
something?
already gone a lot today, but I recall, given Tyra's story, that, and many times I've lost my temper. I've really lost my temper. So I have that in me. And I'm not going to tell you all the stories about that yet because I know we're short on time. I'm willing if we actually do another session. But I just want to acknowledge that I do have a temper and it's ugly. Over.
I want to just say one more thing to Kayla in regards to your kids. Or I love apologizing when I've behaved like an asshole. And when I apologize to my kids and just say, wow, that was just not a good moment, they love it. And my children know how to apologize. And I know when I've lost my cool, or if something eats at me afterwards, like, I should have done that differently. I'm really good at coming around saying, God, I'm really sorry, you know? So apologizing to your kids is like one of the greatest gifts you can give them. I'm complete.
What could I have done differently? I actually did do it differently. I would stop doing whatever I was doing, stop immediately and pay attention, undivided attention. Sometimes I wouldn't even breathe till I had to breathe. And that was a technique that I used at work and brought it home. And that really stood me in good stead. I'm complete.
So Stacey and I, before we were we hopped on a session, and instead of the typical 3 Talanoa questions that are asked, where are we, what are we going to do today, how are we going to get there, I had asked her if she wanted to ask any questions that were different from the basic Talanoa questions, and the one that she said, which I agree, I put in the chat, question for you all who told stories, what could you have done differently? And I think that's what Jaswinder was saying. And thank you for that, Tyra, because I did do that. I do that now. I apologize, as you know, even though it kind of kills me. I'm just not used to it. I still do it. But anyways, before we open that round, Stacey, did you want to add on to what I'm saying?
Yes. I just want to, we talked about what the second question would be before we actually did this. And now that I've done it, now that we've all been part of it, I would say that, I mean, I would even like to continue this another time, but what I see is that we all want to like also give our own perspective. So I'm thinking that, if we were to do something like this again, maybe the first question should be just as it was, and maybe the second should be an open round to share whatever it is you want to share, whether it be your thoughts or anything.
And just to add on that too, we don't talk about each other's stories in the Talanoa. Like, I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to talk about Jaswinder's story. I'm not going to talk about Sam's story.
Oh, why not? I was rather hoping you'd spread it around.
Because it's Talanoa.
After the 10 o'clock hour, if we choose to go there again. But yeah, it's really an internal thing, because again, these are very personal stories, and sometimes people can get kind of touchy, because it takes a tremendous amount of courage to, well, for me at least, to actually say this. It's kind of embarrassing, but
yeah. So I'm just going to use my few minutes to say that, well, what would I do differently? Obviously, if I know now what I knew then, I would have done things differently. But what I get listening to everybody's stories and trying to sense make in my mind is that a really helpful environment is when that, for me, when I know that there will be people that will step in. It would be nicer if I didn't have to ask. Now I'm talking about just from me alone. I can relate a lot to Tyra's, the way she was raised. There's always been a part, I want to be the good one. I was the polite child. It's hard to be polite and at the same time be assertive and learn how to navigate that. And then there's other things that come up, like I recognize that, like there were times that I didn't jump in today. And there was a reason, because I guess I realized that sometimes it's harder for people to do things in the way that the rules are set up. And so a little bit of leeway isn't that bad either. But I guess most of what I want to say is that, so when Sam talked about a safety pin, yes, thank you. I see that safety pin, Jaswinder, thank you. I know you guys, you have those imaginary safety pins for me, which is why I keep coming back to GCC as opposed to some other places. I forgot what I was going to say though. Yeah, I forgot. But anyway, what I'd love to see is an environment, and we usually have this here, where people, they do feel comfortable to jump in when necessary. And I would hate to see all of that taken away, because it's kind of, the way I look at it, I want to be in an environment where people step in when needed, but just not right away, because sometimes you take away someone else's opportunity to learn something for themselves. So again, it's all about that balance Oh, that's what I was going to say. The CEO that they hired, to me, that's the biggest thing, that it doesn't seem that traditionally businesses or our society have looked to those parts of somebody's personality that should automatically disqualify them from being in charge. And you know, I have Ruth Bader Ginsburg on my mind right now. And when it comes to the idea of judges, that is another place where it should be a prerequisite. The one thing you should be able to do well is to be able to put your opinions aside. And if you're not good at being able to find that, you know, be objective, you shouldn't even be up for the job. Likewise, if you're in a position of authority and you don't have that ability to empathize with other people and to understand, you should not even be qualified. I don't care how you can use your expertise in another way, but you should not be in that position of ultimate power. And with that, I know that was a little preachy, but with that, I'm complete. Sam?
Your question, what could you have done differently? So I'll answer it in two ways. If I knew then what I knew then, I couldn't have done anything very differently. That's all I knew, right? But if I knew then what I knew now, I would do two things. Not in the moment, but I would do a whole lot more Tai Chi. I would do a whole lot more meditation. That is the biggest impact that I can potentially see to my previous life. Because once I started doing Tai Chi and once that level of meditation started having an effect on me, I would go through days more smoothly. And people may not understand that when I first say it, but you got to feel it after, I would say, probably 3 to 4 years of Tai Chi before I actually started seeing this. And right now, I'm not as regular as I used to be, but I used to do it like 45 minutes, 6 days a week. And that was a really, really good experience because I could finally then really feel the difference. Even that's not as much as what people say you should do. There's that should word. But I really think that is my ground level conclusion, which is what would I have done differently with my life to get through these moments? I would do more Tai Chi. And if you don't do Tai Chi, do more meditation. Maybe yoga has the same thing. I'm not an expert in yoga. But for me, it's Tai Chi. And that's what made a big difference. And that's what I'm trying to get back to myself. Over.
Dennis, do you want to share anything? It doesn't have to be a story. It could be just anything. Say hello.
I think today I'm more of a listener.
Tell
Kayla?
us where you're from and what you do and just basic.
Basic? Oh, where I'm from? I am in California. I'm friends with Kayla. I'm in Pasadena. I work for a medical group as a kind of a workflow consultant, and I assess wait time to our hospital system and reports to the government. I have a wife and an 11-year-old, which the last session that I joined, I talked about. But yes, most of you here are new to me, but some of you I've met last time. Very grateful to be part of this. But yeah, today, you know, everything is relatable. I didn't think I have I mean, you know, I certainly have stories to share, but at the same time, like I kind of take like tidbits from all of you, and all of it's very relatable, from parenting to growing up, coming from a different country, and, you know, being treated, you know, badly, and aggression. So all of your stories, it's very relatable. So I am good today. I'm complete.
Thank you for coming.
Sorry to interject, but Kayla mentioned, are you from Taiwan or were you?
No, I'm from Hong Kong.
Oh, Hong Kong. Okay.
Yeah.
Were you born in Hong Kong or born in the U.S.?
Born in Hong Kong. So also relatable is I came when I was around 9-10. So, you know, to what your story, you know, so I came around 9-10, and coming to the US, and I went to a Catholic school, and I was the only Asian boy in the grade, in my grade. There's only like 48 of us. Yeah, there were a couple like Asian girls, but in my class, I was the only Asian boy, and there's like stuff that happened. But yeah, I think all of you guys have kind of touched on the stories that's similar. So yeah, I'm good. I'm complete. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dennis, I'm in Pasadena.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, and I volunteered for 2 years at the Huntington Hospital. I don't know what hospital you're with, but
I'm Kaiser.
okay, yeah. Love
Yeah.
Pasadena. Yeah.
But you're down the street from me. I mean, literally, the Huntington Hospital.
Yeah. So I live in Bungalow Heaven.
Oh, okay, cool.
My neighborhood.
Cool.
Yeah, hi neighbor.
I'm near the
Nice.
Rose Bowl.
Yeah, so we're practically neighbors. Nice to meet you, Dennis. Yay.
Nice to meet you.
We got to get Kayla over here and we'll all have lunch in my backyard.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Alex had his hand up too.
Yeah, I was thinking about the wisdom involved in having an impact on your behaviour, on our behaviour, on my behaviour. How I change that behaviour wisely is a matter of having good habits, good thinking habits, good responding habits, which take time to develop and change. I mean, this chart I use, see this chart with it's got 3 weeks on it with days marked off. It's a whiteboard, it's mini whiteboard. And I can tick those days off. There's 21 days in those 3 weeks until I get to the end. And I've changed that behaviour because they say 21 days, but it could be 25, it could be 18, it's a matter of a repetition over a period of time. And 21 days is a good suggestion because it seems to work well. And that consistency results in a greater impact on how you respond to bullying and how you bully others if you're not responding carefully. If you're living in the moment, in the now, and you're emotionally charged by some trigger, then you need that tool. You're able to respond instead of reacting because you've practiced this thing for 21 days. And when it comes up, you're there immediately. One word can put you back into the peaceful, calm environment where you can think, okay, this person's not behaving as I expected or as I wished. Do I have any authority? Do I have any impact? Can I offer them help or suggestions, or would I be better off walking away? And that's about as far as it gets,
And I just wanted to add, for like less than a minute, hopefully, that with my story with my friend Elima, what would I've done differently? I don't know. I think I did everything that I could. Just I walked away from that situation. Would I've gone on a hike with her ex-husband? Now, I don't know. I probably never, but at the moment, I did what I thought was right, and it was, in my opinion, harmless, and many people thought so too. So thanks, Alex, for those words, because you pretty much summarized it. And just to remind everyone, we've got 1 minute left. If anyone wants to check out, you're welcome to, but this is Sam's page. So Sam, if you want to keep it, it's really your call.
Colin?
Anybody wants to check out before I go?
Not before you go.
Okay, that's great. Well, sometimes I do, like a minute, right? Give them a little bit of time. Yeah, what would I do differently? Well, the story that I didn't want to tell you about, I can tell you that I actually acted, I think, quite well. As much as I am guilty in causing drama because I have that sarcasm, and I usually don't use it until I get to a third stage of frustration. Like I give it a lot. I give a lot of rope, not a softie so much as, but I give people a lot of rope to explain themselves, and to get into details if they want to. But when you come up against somebody who you have to share space with, and they are possibly have some anger issues, let's just say that, and they lash out at you, and they give you all the reason in the world that when you get that moment of control or power, or all of a sudden they've gone too far and you can act upon it. Quite dramatic ways, actually. And I chose the higher road, and the person was quite scared for a while that I might actually, call the authorities or whatever, because I was fully in my right to do so. It was violence, right? So I said I haven't really had any violence. This is one case that I had quite recently. So essentially, I let them figure out what they're going to do about what they did. Let them try to come up with a solution, which is what Kayla's asking. What would you have done differently? So I let him in real time figure out what he would do differently, and me not force any direction. And it took a few weeks, and I eventually came up, since there was actual damage involved and a cost, what do you call it? There's a financial cost in what had happened. I didn't make any decision for 2 weeks, and then I came up with a clever idea that was pretty well perfect, which put 100% of the problem on them, 0% of the problem on me, and I really didn't have to do much at all. Now I know this is all innuendo, but the deal is that I actually felt good that I was able to resist lashing out, and allow that person to consider what they've done. And they come, oh, what are you going to do? You're not, it's mostly your fault. You made me do it, and oh, this, that, and all this. And I said, look, I don't make you do anything, right? I said, you make those decisions on your own, what you're going to do, and I'm not taking responsibility for it. Whether I was being sarcastic or not, this guy was like out of my life. He's already in trouble with other people, and I don't need to add to it. I just need to keep. I've already identified that that's the wrong tree. Don't bark up it. And actually, I think the final straw came when he violated another person, and they dealt with it because they weren't as soft as I was. And he's no longer around my life. So yeah, that was quite a. I think I did really well in figuring out. I guess it really a bit to what Sam talks about as the 4 agreements, and I think just knowing what's going on. Incidents that happen here at the GCC are much different because I don't have a lot of control what happens here, as I would have had in the other situation. So I don't feel that things get resolved here when there's conflict. And there's several on the map that we can go and look at, and we tried to. And I got accused of wasting people's time, not appreciating how much people care about me, about being over dramatic. When I was attacked, I felt like I was attacked, and everybody's saying, well, let it roll off your back. Well, it was recorded, right? And I wasn't so upset with what I had done when it was recorded, but then I heard it's continuing on outside the GCC. So that's when I kind of got upset. And I said, okay, one thing, if a GCC member is going to go outside of the group and attack me, then I think That's where somewhere we can have a look at it. And I called that rule 0, where you try to step in. You try to step in where the bullying is and try to hear both sides. But none of that happened because the GCC is not really a group. And unfortunately, out of that, I lost my admin status. You know, Josh says, "Do you want me to give you your admin status back?" And I said, "No,
we're getting really
forget about it." I said, "Forget about it. If they want to take my admin status away." So yeah, I do feel I was very much bullied in that. In that, I was so surprised. You know, even I think that people really tried to do some stuff. Like I think Doug tried to come up with a document about GCC governance. Or what is the GCC? Because he's a lawyer, right? Well, I think he got tangled up in the malleability of what the GCC. He didn't want to or couldn't or. So we had a few meetings after that about what was to be happened, but I was totally unsatisfied with the whole thing. That's just one.
Can I just jump in for a minute, Colin?
Yeah, I'll end it there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's really interesting chances for us here to do it right. And what would we have done differently? And what I heard from Alex just a few minutes ago was quite heartwarming. I really appreciated hearing what Alex had to say, and so and I think everybody here really does lean in. So it does give us a playground and an opportunity to try to understand the dynamics of these things. And that's kind of what I'm most interested in is how do you navigate conversation, especially when it's difficult. Like how do you get somebody from just being an asshole and over talking you, right? Anyway, go ahead, Stacey.
Yeah, listening to you, you reminded me of something I just want to share before I get up and take a break, which was I didn't share any of the stories about how I was bullied by my ex-husband, for example. But I do want to tell you what I would do different, even though I didn't share that story. And what I would do differently is I would let him see how much his bullying hurt. So growing up, I was always told that I was too sensitive. So I developed what appeared to others as a very thick skin. And when I was confronted with bullying, I puffed out my chest and I got strong, and you're not going to bully me. And it changed who I was. It made me harder in a way that I don't want to be. So if I could do it again, when my feelings were hurt, I would let it be known that I was hurt rather than pretending it didn't hurt me. So I just wanted to share that. And with that, I need to take a bio break. And I would love it if we could, for the sake, Sam, it's up to you, but I'd love it if we could stop and then restart. But that's up to you. But I'm going to kind of move away now. And I'll probably come back though.
I don't know what you mean by stop and restart.
So
you mean
that
stop the recording?
Just for a minute and then start, just to have a clear distinction of when, because now I think it's sort of like a free-for-all. So I just think it should be a free-for-all. Like no moderators anymore. Now we're just people hanging out.
Okay.
I bet Sam will say no.